let this be a blessing to your audience and what is most useful. Yeah, so let's back up real quickly on the fund of funds aspect, and let's do a little bit of history on sovereigns and faith-driven movements because I think it explains the heart behind why we stood up this entity. So early 2000s, Henry Kasner, who is the founder of both Sovereigns Capital, co-founder alongside Luke Rausch, and also Faith-Driven Movements, which he co-founded alongside Justin Foreman. Um, Him and his best buddy David Morgan started a telecoms company, and they went out to Silicon Valley as tech startup guys do. You know this world well in your work with B Ventures, to go pitch all the VCs on Sand Hill Road, and they walked away super discouraged. One, because they went 0 for 40, which is not a great batting average to bring it back to baseball terms. But then also they just felt like, man, we've built this company, Bandwidth.com is the name of the company, on these values of faith, family, work, and fitness in that order. And it just felt like it wasn't super well received in Silicon Valley. It was a lot of the mentality in the early 2000s, kind of post PayPal mafia, rise of the venture ecosystem was like, what can you do for me from a profit standpoint and how fast? And so Henry kind of said, hey, I want to become the investor I couldn't find if I ever make it someday. Well, without having to raise much more outside capital, they just got super lean, bootstrapped this thing, and by God's grace, they took Bandwidth public. Wonderful windfall. Henry ultimately goes on in 2012 to start Sovereigns Capital with Luke Rausch, who is one of our co-CEOs today. And their desire was, let's go find faith-driven founders, and let's be the capital partner of choice to those founders who know that when they take capital from this person, they're strapped to the mast with them. They are investors that are in the foxhole with them, and they understand the deep conviction, the deep why as to why they're building that venture, and they want to be the capital partner that fuels that, amplifies that, but then also says, hey, how's your soul doing along the way? How's your family doing along the way? Let's make sure you don't lose your identity in XYZ startup that you're starting. And let's keep this about, the why God put in your heart to go build this venture. Henry and Luke are running this thing from, let's call it 2012, 2017, 2018. And Henry has this moment where he's like, man, I started Sovereigns, and you'll get this, acutely as a venture investor, Shane, to be a delight and a blessing to faith-driven entrepreneurs. But as you know, deal flow is the lifeblood of any fund, whether it's venture, private equity, growth equity, what have you, private credit, real estate, any of it. But what Henry was discovering is like, man, we say no to 99 out of 100 founders that we talk to. And that's just how it works in venture. You take risks, you're looking for asymmetric outcomes, and one in only 100 founders really becomes the one that you can partner with. And so Henry's like, I wanted this to be an encouragement to the faith-driven founder. We are able to encourage a select crew that become Sovereign's Capital portfolio companies. He's like, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to have something for the broader ecosystem, the broader community, if you will. So he started Faith-Driven Entrepreneur to kind of bring vernacular media, content, community connections to this faith-driven kind of marketplace ecosystem. Faith-driven investor started right behind that to say, hey, what we're doing for the entrepreneurs, we should also do for the investors. And it kind of built and, vitalized this really catalytic community. I had the privilege of stepping into that in 2021, kind of going to work for Henry in a variety of capacities on the ministry side, on some of the investing stuff he was doing. One of these platforms we had where deals were coming in and investors were coming in. It was a joy. I loved it. Fun and chaotic as is Henry Kasner, but like always so pointed at the direction of faithfulness, which I just loved. An amazing man to learn from. Um, and around that same time, Sovereign's Capital was also seeing, hey, all of these direct deals we're doing, whether it's venture and private equity, because Sovereigns is it kind of blossomed as well. This is where the fund of funds comes into it. They're realizing, man, there's other institutional caliber, great fund managers out there who are led and have a deep conviction of their kind of why and their faith. That's the reason behind why they're investing, behind how they view capital markets, where they see the capital they have as influence. And they're kind of other sovereigns capitals out there. They might not be as overtly faith driven. They might be as overtly faith driven. They might not just invest in Christians like Sovereigns Capital does. They might look to invest in Silicon Valley tech entrepreneurs because they want to kind of be that voice of wisdom and discernment and kind of biblical guidance on a startup founder's shoulder. And so as Henry is kind of growing and this faith-driven movement is blossoming by just God's grace, Sovereigns is kind of saying, what if we stood up a product, an entity, a fund of funds that goes and invests in the other managers that we see out there that we co-invest with that send us deals that we send deals, and then maybe they play in different sectors or stages, whatever it might be, what have you. And so that's when the Sovereign's Capital Access Fund, SCAF, was started. And its entity, is designed and its purpose is designed to go find excellent fund managers. Like returns have to be top of mind for these folks, but then also that are leading their firm out of a deep conviction and personal calling and why. Now, one of the things at Sovereigns, and so I then stepped over and joined Sovereigns in 24. So I've been doing that for a couple years now, and it parlayed organically off of the work we were doing at Faith Driven Investor because we were bringing in all types of fund managers to this ecosystem, gathering them in community. Henry was investing in some of them, other faith-driven investors, FDIs as we call them, were investing in some of these funds. So our work was very kind of organic back and forth flow between us and the Sovereigns fund of funds. I moved over 24, joined the fund of funds platform more formally at Sovereigns. We raised a fund too, and the thing I'd say is that we are never prescriptive when a fund manager comes in saying, "Hey, this is what we expect for your faith to look like in the marketplace." What we do is we invite them to be descriptive with us, and they say, "Hey, this is how we live out our faith. We invest in redemptive products and services. We are a healthcare focused firm, and we're looking for those kind of products and services that truly like enable human flourishing." Some folks, let's call it like a, specialty manufacturing type private equity fund. They're like, hey, the widget, the what we do is very neutral. We're manufacturing some component, some product. It doesn't necessarily have a good or an evil to it. However, we think very thoughtfully about the practices we do inside the companies that we own and the people that are inside of them to bring about human flourishing. It could be broad-based employee ownership with someone on a manufacturing shop floor getting to participate in the upside of a deal, not just the private equity firm or the management team. It could be things like deploying chaplains onto the shop floors of different companies, where a chaplain's caring for people and it's about the human that is working for this organization, not just about the bottom line. But ironically, when you care for the human, you often see the bottom line flourish as well. It could be employee Bible studies. It could be really, positive benefits that think about faith and family values and say, hey, we actually sponsor adoptions, or we pay a huge portion of someone who's looking to adopt if they're struggling with infertility, or we've got marriage benefits where we make sure that you're sponsored a couple times a year to go away with your spouse on a date night. So just things like that where, Shane, capital has remarkable amounts of influence. The fund manager sits over a dozen companies, 30 companies in the case of venture like yourself, that they choose to partner with, get in the foxhole with. And those founders pick up the phone from you. The operators pick up the phone from their capital partners. They know that as the golden rule we say, and the entertainment side of what we do is not treat everyone like you want to be treated. That is Jesus's golden rule. But John Irwin said that says, he who has the gold makes the rules. And so, in this world where private equity and venture, the manager has the gold, they get to kind of set the terms. It is paramount that, one that's led by their faith is thinking about how do I steward and wield this influence well and not just yield it to the world or actually weaponize it. So long answer there, but hopefully that kind of explains our heart posture behind the fund of funds and how we're thinking about trying to partner with managers for excellent returns, yes, but also spur them on towards, kind of ministry and word, ministry and deed.
Richard, this resonates with the soul on so many levels, and I imagine a lot of the people listening I know that they're hustling, they're out there going to events, they're looking for
Hmm.
investors, or they're looking for ways to plug in. So, how can someone easily get in tune with all that sovereign, faith-driven investor are doing? Where should they go? What events should they attend? What do you recommend?
Yeah. The first place I would start is go to the faithdrivenentrepreneur.org website, go to the faithdriveninvestor.org website, or one of the brands that kind of unifies those two things is solving the world's greatest problems.org, SWGP. Google any of that if you don't want to type in the full, HTML. Um, then you'll quickly realize, man, there is a healthy movement afoot. And believe me, it's not, and Henry and Justin would tell you this, who founded Faith Driven. This is not an, like, we want all doors to kind of, or all paths to come back to Faith Driven. They would tell you, hey, you're an entrepreneur at scale looking to be around other entrepreneurs who are doing 10, 20 million a year in revenue, whatever it might be. They would tell you, go get involved in C12 in your local community. Go sit around with a dozen other business executives and be discipled by a business executive who's gone before you. There's FCCI, Convene. If you're on the investor side and you're a financial advisor, go to Kingdom Advisors. I mean, there is a healthy movement afoot, and Faith Driven's desires to kind of, bring those communities together. Now, and then very tangibly, if you're someone who's like, hey, I'm looking to raise capital, of course, like go look on Sovereign's Capital's website, apply for the intake form. If it's not Sovereign's, use the Faith Driven website or connect with Sovereigns and see if there's other firms out there who you might be more of a fit for if Sovereigns is not a fit. But if you're someone who's just like, I just want good grounded biblical advice around this, like I'm an investor and I want to like put capital to work, like reach out to someone on the Kingdom Advisors website, go to National Christian Foundation, get in touch with your local NCF relationship manager or president and get counsel around, hey, like what does the Bible have to say about my money? How can I be a wise steward on the generosity front? But then NCF and every local community, I know it is here in Austin, is like deeply connected into different business leaders, different folks on the investment side. So, man, Aslan is on the move, as we like to say. God is moving, and so there's a lot of different folks who are playing in this space that you should totally feel free to tap on.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to plug in, and I would just encourage people just like try one. And there's something too about like when you and I saw each other in Austin at the Solving the World's Greatest Problems
Hmm.
conference. There's something about being in person at these sort of gatherings that, like, even at Wheaton outside Chicago, when I saw you there, the people there, you can like go a little bit of a level deeper because of their faith. You don't have to just talk about what type of companies you're looking for. You can like talk deeper about like the why they're looking for these companies. And you can't really do that at a lot of different conferences, or it's just a little bit weird to do that. But the quality of the people who love Jesus at these events is just like been such a surprising, delightfully surprising experience. The people are really just remarkable for a lot of reasons.
Man, I would fully agree. Shane, like God's plan A will always be in and through the local church. Like that is who Jesus gave himself up for, his bride. Um, and the church, the ecclesia, is the people. And it is
Mhm.
absolutely paramount that we belong and are connected to a local, healthy Sunday body. Do not get me wrong there. But I think often, and maybe you'll have this experience, like in your small group, you might have some people be like, man, I know your heart. I know who you are as a believer. Your work's a little fuzzy to me. And then oftentimes people get into their work sphere and they're like, yeah, I know your work. I know your work ethic. I know your product. I know what you're working on. That faith thing, your kind of conviction is a little fuzzy and odd to me. And so what I do think is beautiful is these marketplace ministries have bubbled up to be like, hey, I both get your work and I also get the faith component. And then I think the sign of a healthy kind of growing ecosystem is then you can kind of segment inside of that what lane you run in. Like that event you mentioned in Wheaton was specifically mentioned for private capital allocators, fund managers like yourself, people that are GPs of private equity or venture funds or real estate or private credit funds. And so then you've got folks who are all kind of running in the same lane, looking for deals, doing deals, operating companies, investing in startups, what have you. But then, like you said, they're unified by a shared faith in Jesus, and then they're just like, let's get actually real about the struggles. We don't just have to do what we do at the other industry conference, and let's talk about why we're doing what we're doing, what we're seeing, how we can be a positive force. What are you doing inside your companies that is yielding great results for the people inside of them that I could maybe glean and do inside of our companies?
There's so many different avenues, so many different questions pop to my mind, but it's so good. One final thing in the last few minutes.
Yep.
What is next for Sovereign? What's the big vision? There's a lot of different initiatives coming. If you had to summarize what's to come in the next year, 2, 3 years, where is this behemoth of faith-driven investors steering to?
Man, you're kind to ask, and I appreciate the kind words about Sovereigns. Here's what I would say, and I think, to be clear, I'm not on senior leadership at Sovereigns. I get to play a small role, and I'm very grateful to play that role. But here's what I would say is that, we are already in a lot of asset classes. We have a venture fund, a lower middle market private equity fund, the fund of funds. We've kind of talked about those three. We have a multifamily real estate focused group, a public markets focused strategy, and then we've done some unique kind of one-off stuff in the entertainment space. So if you think about it, we're in kind of six different asset classes, if you will. I think if you were to say, hey, what's next for Sovereigns, man, by God's grace, he's brought us up and over that kind of $1 billion in AUM threshold. It is not about AUM by any means, but we've kind of reached this level of like hey, there's something here. There's a track record here. There's a lot of legitimacy here, and capital has followed that. But I think for us, what's next is like we want to go deep in each of those verticals. I don't think it's announcing new things. I think it's being faithful in where we are and playing in kind of the sandbox we find ourselves in really well and with a lot of excellence and faithfulness. So it's probably less entities, less verticals, and it's more depth in each of those verticals.
So good. I love it. I'm so looking forward to it. And thank you for the work that you're doing, Richard, on the work that the Lord's given to you and that you're exercising with what's in your hands. It's very, very encouraging. And everything that Richard just talked about here today, it's all going to be linked in the show notes to connect with him, follow him along, and then also get plugged into also the different sort of initiatives and events going on this year around sovereigns and the work that they're doing. So, Richard, so grateful for you, man.
Shane, enjoyed this, man. Thank you for your time. Love being on, and what a joy. Hope your listeners get something out of this.